Grace and Peace. I'm Brian Musser, the Baptist Campus Minister at Drexel University, and this is Peace and Power Christian Fellowship, the peace of Jesus Christ to change our lives, the power of the Holy Spirit to change our world. We are continuing our series, the Summer Term Bible Study Series. We're wrapping things up. This is lesson 9 of 10, so the next lesson will be the last lesson. But this one, we're looking at King Josiah, one of the good and godly kings of Israel, but as exile is coming and how Josiah actually prepares the people for an exile. And part of that idea, part of what's going on is they will find a book that was lost, finding a lost book. But Josiah is a good and godly king, and the 2 Kings 22, 1 through 2 sets him up this way. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. His mother's name was Jedidah, daughter of Adadiah. She was from Bazkah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and followed completely the ways of his father David, not turning aside to the right or to the left. So these verses set Josiah up as a good and godly king over the southern kingdom of Judah and puts Josiah on par with King David and actually King Hezekiah. There's some debate among scholars whether or not the author of Kings prefers Hezekiah over Josiah. But basically, those are the two good and godly kings that connect with God as they are ruling the people of Judah. So either Hezekiah is the favorite or Josiah is the favorite, but both of them are presented as the two godliest kings Israel ever had. Now, to put this in context, what Josiah does to as faithful to God is Josiah starts to take care of the temple of the Lord. He's starting to do a refurbish project to repair it and reestablish it. And this is necessary because, as we've seen in the timeline, Hezekiah was a good and godly king. Hezekiah was the great-grandfather of Josiah. Hezekiah's son was Manasseh, and Manasseh was the southern kingdom of Judah's most evil king. Manasseh is credited with doing all the sins possible that everybody preceding him did. And Manasseh reigned for 55 years. Now, Chronicles highlights that Manasseh repented and turned to the Lord the last couple years of his reign. But for decades, Manasseh did evil in the eyes of the Lord, put idols in the temple, and probably considering that the temple fell into disuse and disrepair and needed a good cleaning work project. After Manasseh was Amon, but Amon really only reigned for 2 years, and then Josiah comes along as well. So there's been multiple decades where the temple was not being taken care of because of the idolatry of Manasseh. Interestingly enough, Josiah became king when he was a young boy, 8 years old, and he may not have seen evil Manasseh. Who knows when Manasseh repented? But it was probably late in life. Some scholars think it was in the last 4 years of his reign, and then add the 2 years of Amon's reign. So maybe Josiah only saw repentant Manasseh, or maybe saw him, only remembered repentant Manasseh. But Josiah decides to start repairing the temple. And in the process of repairing the temple, something very interesting happens. Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the secretary, "I have found the book of the law in the temple of the Lord." He gave it to Shaphan, who read it. Then Shaphan the secretary went to the king and reported to him, "Your officials have paid out the money that was in the temple of the Lord and have entrusted it to the workers and supervisors at the temple." Then Shaphan the secretary informed the king, "Hilkiah the priest has given me a book." And Shaphan read from it in the presence of the king. So the book of the law was found, which means it had to have been lost. And seems like it has been lost for a while because they seem a little bit surprised that they found it. Hilkiah tells the king they found a book, not the book of the law, not the Bible, not the Torah, not they've just, and he reads it, and we'll see that the king is surprised by what he reads in it. But this is interesting to note, and this is, I believe this is one of the most important verses in the history of the world at some levels, definitely in the history of the Jewish people and within Christianity as well. I can't imagine what would happen to the southern kingdom of Judah if they go into exile without finding the book of the law. Now, to put this in perspective, King Josiah died in the year 609. So, exile happens. The Babylonians conquer and destroy Jerusalem in 586. So 14 plus 9, 23 years. So King Josiah died 23 years before the exile. This is said to, King Josiah reigned for about 31 years. So probably from 640 to 609, King Josiah is reigning. This happens in the 18th year of King Josiah's reign, that they find the book of the law. So someplace around 623, 622, they find the book of the law. So about 36, 37 years before the exile. Now, 36, 37 years before the exile, the book of the law was missing. If it had not been found, I don't know what happens to the southern kingdom of Judah while they're in exile with Babylon. And we'll unpack that a little bit later. But this is finding the book of the law and actually responding to the book of the law as Josiah does, I believe is one of the important precursors for how the southern kingdom of Judah not only survives the exile, but also kind of cements themselves as the people of God even while in exile. Now, I've identified, and these are not just me, but there are about 6 identity markers for who the Jewish people see themselves as in the Old Testament. They're connected with Abraham and the Abrahamic covenant through circumcision. So when God promised Abraham a people, the circumcision was the sign of that covenant, and they're connected with that. They see themselves as a people set free from slavery by the Exodus, and they celebrate that through the Passover. So the covenant with Abraham and the delivery from Egypt are who they saw themselves are. They are a people who have been told by God how to live life in the presence of God through the Torah, the book of the law, how to be the people of God, how to live as the people of God. God gave them the promised land. God gave them the king, the Davidic monarchy, and they're able to worship God through the sacrifices at the temple. So circumcision, Passover, Torah, promised land, king, temple. Those are the 6 pieces of who the Jewish folks or the southern kingdom of Judah saw themselves as at this time. And one of those at least one of those identity markers is missing. King Josiah is investing in repairing the temple. King Josiah is in the Davidic monarchy. They're still in the promised land. We'll see, you see later in Chronicles that they participate in the Passover. Don't know much about circumcision here. But the Torah, the book of the law, one of the primary identity markers for who the Jewish people is, went missing. And we'll look at how long it had been missing. But the fact that they find it is a piece of their identity, who they are. They are the people given the book of the law by God, prepares them, helps them to figure out how to go into exile in a good way. So that's kind of what we're going to unpack in this lesson, the 9th lesson. What is going on with Josiah finding the book of the law? So as always, you can join this conversation in 2 ways: in person Sunday nights and these weekly wrap-ups on YouTube. And then you can find me on social media: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, WordPress, and YouTube. Like, subscribe, and follow in each of those areas as appropriate. Thank you. I enjoyed having this conversation with you. Hopefully it continues real soon.